We're expecting a big group today, so thank you so much for coming. All right. We'll continue to allow those who are still sneaking in to come on in, but we're going to get going as well because I know we've got a lot to talk about and present today, and we're hoping that you'll all be enjoying the conversation that is going to be led by a panel of speakers. My name is Lural Ramirez. I'm the head of school here at UWC Thailand, and it's a real honor to be hosting the webinar today with a panel of great educators from UWC Thailand working on driving transformative learning here at our secondary school. And so let me go ahead and introduce you to that wonderful team, and then I'm going to let them go ahead and take over. John Field is our secondary principal. He joined UWC Thailand in 2017 and has spent over 20 years working in IB World Continuum schools on 4 continents, including positions in schools in Switzerland, Tanzania, Peru, and Hong Kong. John considers himself a true lifelong learner who strives to stay up to date with the very latest research on how we all learn best. As an educator, he passionately believes that when we are all comfortable taking risks and learning from our mistakes, we will feel empowered to pursue our interests and provide the very best learning environments for students. Heidi Oxley-Whitnell is our CAS and Service Learning Coordinator, and she's going to be joining us on the panel today. Heidi joined UWC Thailand in 2015, previously the Vice Principal of Student Life at the Aga Khan Academy in Mombasa, Kenya. Heidi has had extensive experience as the head of PE at schools such as UNIS, New York, and the International School of Manila. She's committed to the concept of service learning and has led students working on projects in places such as Kenya, the Philippines, and Cambodia, as well as being the Creativity, Activity, and Service, or CAS coordinator, and teaching PE in the secondary school here at UWC Thailand. Heidi is responsible for ensuring that service remains a central component of an education for students here from kindergarten to grade 12. Her role at UWC Thailand has enabled the students to build sustainable community relationships, develop strategic plans, and create legacy projects. Recently, Heidi's been sharing her CAS skills and knowledge with over 50 CAS coordinators from around the world, delivering monthly seminars as a part of the Faraya Mini PD program. Remke Landenok is our MYP coordinator, and she's also joining our panel today. Remke is originally from the Netherlands and joined UWC Thailand also in 2017. She is an MYP workshop leader and has worked in Chile, Singapore, at UWC SEA, in Germany, and in Korea, where she's held various roles as head of department, advisory coordinator, and activities coordinator. Remke is trained as a whole school physical education teacher with a specialism in sports management and holds a master's degree in advanced educational practice. Remke for us is our MYP coordinator and master of many hats and wearer of many positions. And she holds a lot of our essential connection elements of the school together. Remke is a passionate educator, a builder at heart, always looking for opportunities to enhance the learning experience for students. As an educator, Remke believes that learning should be connected to the real world, allowing students to see the importance of what is being taught and allowing students to connect with their own passion and interest. And last, but very much not least, we have John Lancet on our panel today. He is our secondary design teacher, and he joined UWC Thailand in 2019. John's taught in Asia for over 10 years in multiple subjects, and now as the design teacher at UWC Thailand, he's passionate about the work that he has students do and putting students first in his work. It's his belief that every student can achieve their goals if they are supported as individuals, and he believes in offering holistic education to all and being a well-rounded person as something that people should strive for. As we work through our panel discussion today, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an idea of how this is going to run. We're going to hear from John Field, and then we're going to have a discussion with the team. If at any time what you're hearing is really inspiring you, you want to join the conversation, you want to be part of it, please put any comments, questions into the chat. We have a chat moderator who will be watching that chat. And we're going to be leaving quite a substantial amount of time at the end for the panel to discuss the topics that we address, and then also to involve you. We love a webinar with lots of community participation, so please put your questions into the chat and plan on joining the conversation. And to start that conversation off, I'm going to turn it over to John Field. Really grateful for the opportunity to have you all here joining us today. Thanks so much, John.
Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. The panelists we've chosen today, we could have chosen anybody from the secondary school because, and we'll talk about the fundamental building blocks of transformative learning, because transformative learning has to be a whole community approach to learning. You can't do transformative learning in isolation. It has to be the community, the school, the students, the adults in the building, the entire community that surrounds the school for real transformative learning to happen. So we're going to spend about 5 minutes on the building blocks. We're going to spend a couple of minutes on just telling you the cool things we do, and then a few minutes talking about what next, and then we'll jump into the discussion. So this is going to be quite quick, but it's recorded, so you can play it at half speed, and then you'll actually maybe be able to get everything that I say. We are so fortunate to be part of the United World College movement, because the very ethos, the very mission statement of UWCs give us a moral imperative to be at the leading edge of transformative learning. And for those of you that don't know UWCs, here's our mission, motto, and values. And the thing about the mission that I love is the call for us as a movement, as a school, to be a force in education. And that force in education means that we need to be continually looking at learning, continually reviewing what we do, continually trying to transform learning for the benefit of all of our students, the place where we live, and the wider world. And you'll see the background behind me is very messy, because right now we are living that transformative learning model, because we're ideating and we're getting things right and getting things wrong, and we're throwing things up in the air, and we're having a really great time doing it. I think going back a little bit about one of the building blocks you have to have, and it's in our motto, is you have to have a building block that looks after every individual, looks after every student, and make sure that individually, and our motto says it well, that we have a good heart, balanced mind, healthy body, and that everybody's well-being is core to it, because from that foundation, you can, and we can start living our values of intercultural understanding and a sense of idealism. We're also very fortunate as a UWC that we have now put transformative learning as one of our educational lenses. We've made it very apparent that for us as a school, the person, the individual, our motto is first, and then the really important lenses with which we view everything are mindfulness, global citizenship, sustainability, and now transformative learning. And I think that building block of having the entire community with that moral imperative, and it lived throughout the building from 2 years old to 20 years old that we have here, and the adults and the community, and that we have it as part of our educational lenses is absolutely key. We had a great discussion about 12 months ago about how brave we wanted to be as a school with transformative learning. And we decided that we're a 3-program IB World School, and that ethos of the IB was actually so intertwined with UWCs that we were going to stay a 3-program world school, and that the MYP especially gives us the flexibility to be really transformative within the mission and the values and the vision and the learner profile of the IB. So that's kind of the first building block, that it has to be a whole community approach, and we have to live the mission and the motto and our values. And then the others, I think, are the building blocks of any great school, that is positive and it's safe and inclusive, and we allow students to pursue their own interests. Something unique to us is that mindfulness and the mindful self-awareness, that we can be mindful of our actions and the actions of others and make choices with integrity, and that we question norms, and that everybody's story is important, and that we deal with the significant issues head on. So with all of those building blocks, which I think we have really established at UWC Thailand, we can start talking about transformative learning. And this is our draft 6 of what we believe transformative learning will be and will do and will support our students to become. I'm sure we'll get to draft about 150 before the end of this process, but the why and the what are probably the most important. We believe that transformative learning is about people transforming themselves, their heart, their body, their mind, and building the skills and the competencies to transform their own thinkings and understandings, while supporting others to do the same, with the recognition that you can have very different beliefs and understandings, and both of you can be right. It's embedded in the IB mission statement. And that by doing that, we can help transform our part of the world and then the wider world. So it's our kind of aim that we help produce UWC Thailand students who understand themselves and others better, who are thought leaders and change makers. The UWC movement is about change and about student leadership, that we're proactive in dealing with tensions and dilemmas, that we can go out and create new value. And John will talk about that later because he does it brilliantly. And students who are inspired to be active in driving the future and shaping the future for the better. So that's our kind of why and what. The how in the middle we'll talk about, but it's a lot about student agency, and it's a lot about critical thinking and learning by doing. It's a lot about recognizing the strengths of every individual student on their learning journey, not just the numbers. And most importantly for me, number 7 is keeping the magic alive, because the magic of educational institutions is in what happens there and outside, and the magic that comes from people inspiring others to do things better and differently. A couple of minutes on the cool things that we already do, which is we're pleased with what we do, and we recognize what we do is good, and we also recognize the need to always do a little bit better. We have a great mother tongue program from 5 to 12. It's really important to us that our students keep their mother tongue. That's how they can build great ideas. They can keep in touch with where they're from. They can build communities around language. We have a great personalized learning track already in grade 9 and 10. We have students pursuing interests from theology to animation to nutrition and sports. Some are learning a 3rd language. We have a phenomenal experiential learning class that we embed into our timetable. Within that, we do a lot of outdoor ed. We do a lot of service. We do a lot of learning about things that are very key to the UWC mission, like systems thinking, identity of self, social entrepreneurship. We embed that in our timetable. We have interdisciplinary units, and I'll talk about one in a minute. That's awesome. That combines and blurs the lines between subjects. This year, we've taken our expeditions from a week and we're moving them up to 9 days in grade 9 and 10, with the belief that transformative learning, in a very Kurt Hahn way, a lot of that comes from struggle and resilience and having to struggle through issues, to kind of find the inner self, that kind of you are more than you know part of Kurt Hahn's view. And we believe that extended expeditions that really push our students, that kind of desirable difficulty, that push them to the place where they have to maybe change ideas, change habits, find something deep within themselves. That's a great new addition this year. And we also have a great transcript that reports in grade 11 and 12 on not numbers, but on how the students are living our UWC missions and values, and how they are acquiring the skills to live it and then mobilizing them. So there's some of the cool things that we're currently doing. Our IDU, and Remke might talk about this later, I'm going to summarize 3.5 months of work in a minute. We took in grade 6 the idea that in English you need to learn about storytelling and how you tell stories, and about documentaries and script writing, and in design technology, how you tell a digital story. And we put that with individuals and societies where we want students to understand what global citizenship is and their responsibility to it, and the sustainable development goals. And we merged that with EXP, and we talked to our service providers that we're our partners really on the island. Our service partners is probably the best way to put it, about what they need, and the students went and talked to them about how they could take action and support them. And from all of that, they came up with an action plan, and they made a digital story about the service partners and their journey, and how they'd actually produced what those service partners needed and continued to support those service partners. And at the end, music came in to score their documentaries, which one of the students came up with, as we are the UWC Thailand Manta Rays, the documenta rays, which were awesome. The links there, watch some of them. These are grade 6s during lockdown, produced these. So that's a lot of kind of what we're already doing. So what are we thinking about doing next? And this is the kind of exciting piece. We're thinking about bringing the entire community in to support more values-aligned learning for our students. Initially in grades 6 to 8, but ultimately expanding that throughout 9 and 10, and maybe 11 and 12. But kind of creating 20-hour-long micro-credentials that speak to our mission and values as UWC Thailand. So courses on ethical leadership, conflict transformation, how to live sustainability, social identity, actually doing those courses, hopefully partly run by students, partly run by teachers, and most importantly, partly run by our partners in the community and our parents, so that we get a whole community working on providing the support for micro-credentialing for our students. A bit of a kind of standalone, because we feel it's important that these UWC values are given the time that we can really dig deep into them, and that students can learn and can acquire the skills and the thinking that they can then use throughout their UWC Thailand life progression. The other thing that we're thinking of doing is looking at a big timetable shift. We love the interdisciplinary units. The grade 6 one we just showed you worked brilliantly, even though we were online doing it. And we want to extend that to give students more time to combine more subjects, to give more agency, more flexibility, more ability for the students to drive their learnings within a kind of interdisciplinary framework. So our current thinking, and it might change, is a really kind of simple structure, where this is a grade 6 timetable, for example, where we split the year into 3, and for 2 of those 3 kind of terms, students will be doing subject focused work, say in English, but for one of those terms, one of those 12-week blocks, they will be doing big interdisciplinary units with 4 or 5 other subjects. So for 24 of the 36 weeks in that academic year, the students will be involved in big project-based interdisciplinary learning that gives them the flexibility and the agency to drive their own learning, use their own time, and be able to do that just-in-time learning of, what do I need now? Who do I need to go and see to achieve what I want to from this interdisciplinary unit? So it's very much within the MYP framework, but looking at where the flexibility can be and thinking about driving the agency and the skills and the critical thinking and what we talked about earlier, the actual making things happen, taking action, understanding self, understanding perspectives, and helping transform their ideas, other people's ideas, and making what we do here in the world a little bit of a better place. That is about the 10 minutes I gave myself to paint the picture. Here's some of our roundtable discussions that people have already shared with us. But before we get onto these, I think I'll stop sharing my screen, and then maybe we'll answer the first one together as a roundtable, and then people can just throw out questions, and we'll just discuss them as the 4 of us, and we'll get your thoughts and your input about transformative learning and all the cool stuff that we're currently doing and what we intend to do. So I will stop sharing, and maybe I will go straight from me to John Lancet. Maybe we can start the first question about why the need for a transformative education.
Yeah, absolutely. Being multiple subject teacher as I've been in my career, I've kind of experienced everything from sitting in front of a classroom and talking nonstop in the beginning of my career to now hardly ever standing up to do lectures now in the 20th year. And I've seen education change a ton over that time. And the need for transformative learning kind of seems obvious in a lot of ways. It's the how a lot of times that it's the hard part. But the need here for us is we really already value the idea of service, and we value the idea of experiential learning. And what we want to see is people taking risks with what they do, and not the risks in a dangerous way, but risks in an intellectual way, risks in an self-actualizing kind of way, saying, oh, I've taken on a project that I didn't think that I possibly knew anything about. And at the end, knowing I solved a problem that maybe is a real world issue, right? That someone else, an adult, couldn't solve. And it gives that confidence to a student that they wouldn't get otherwise.
Bram?
Yep, I'm gonna jump in here and then just talk a little bit more. Like everything we do within our school and with the aims that we have in our heads, it's based on research. So it's not just because we like the ideas, but it's got a research-based background where it simply just shows that what we've done in the past doesn't work for the now, the students in the now. It doesn't prepare them for the future that is ahead of them. Just like everything else around us changes, we also need to realize that education has to change like everything else is changing, and we've got to stay up to date and we've got to stay accurate with that. To provide our students with a system that is still set in time from 20, 30 years back doesn't do them credit and doesn't do them well, they will not be prepared for just that. So by delivering this transformative learning, we're not just giving them the knowledge and the content, because it is still there, and I will talk a little bit more about that, but we're actually giving them additional skills. And if you're an IB person, you know it's those ATL skills, it's the soft skills that people are looking for at the workforce. It's really that working together with other people, that collaboration aspect, that teamwork aspect, but also the research element, and really that critical thinking that really comes out and is really developed during processes like this. At the same time, the students are confronted with new things that they will have to develop. So they are confronted with things that are challenging and a little bit more tricky. And that's actually where they've got to learn to push through. That the learning isn't always easy, and it's not always about like, I can master this step, but it's actually how do we get further and how do we always get better? So it's simply about creating an education that's going to meet the needs of our students for the future, not for the past.
There's a great line, and please put questions in the chat. Any and all questions about any learning transformative, throw them at us, and if they're difficult, I'll push them to Ren. There's a really important piece about transformative learning, that we learn differently in different spaces. And I think that's really important. I'm going to push it to Heidi in a minute, because the different learning in the different spaces can be massively transformative. From the classroom, and we're not saying that direct instruction is a horrible thing, but there's you learn something there, and then in the big IDUs, and in the project-based learning, and then in the community service, and then in the outdoor education, and then working from grade 1s with our grade 12s. All of those different spaces are where a lot of the transformative stuff, and then the ability to connect the skills and what you learn across those different spaces is just so powerful. And we're so lucky that we have a lot in place already, that we can link experiential learning with outdoor ed, with what happens in the classroom, with what happens in the boarding house, with what happens in grade 1. And that's the transformative across the school. Our grade 11s, when they work with the grade 5s, that's transformative learning in action, because the thoughts of a 16-year-old very often need the thoughts of a 10-year-old to actually to maybe reduce their willingness to push back or want to push back, because they're seeing a different perspective. And sometimes the 10-year-old will really push back against the 16-year-old, and the 16-year-old's not used to being pushed back against by a 10-year-old, and that's awesome. We love that part of it. I wonder, Heidi, if you want to talk about the transformative learning in the different space of experiential learning or in service, and what we currently have and what we're hoping to make better there.
Oh, big question. Thanks, John. You know, I actually want to appreciate what Laura was saying right from the start. And she was giving a little bio about each person. And, you know, just the fact that all our staff want to learn, encourage our students to learn from mistakes, and we want to apply things to the outside world. And we want our students to be holistic and take on agency. And I think we are so fortunate in experiential learning, where we're taking skills and concepts from different subjects and apply them to working with our service partners, has been, as John says, transformative. It's allowed our students to really develop emotional intelligence and cognitive flexibility. It's allowed our students to actually inspire each other and learn from each other. And I think that's been one of the greatest values that I've seen, the learning from each other that John has just talked about. We're very fortunate that we've been able to partner up with some fantastic organizations, all on our doorstep. And I say on our doorstep, like 20 minutes away, which means that we can actually go on a week during non-COVID times on a weekly basis, you know. So it's, you know, setting the concepts and foundations of skills and knowledge in class, but allowing our students to actually work with our partners on a weekly basis, not helicopter in, stir things up for a very short time and then disappear. Our students have realized that if they do that, they're the ones having to clear up the mess that, you know, the following weeks. So, you know, being those change agents, being empathetic, developing self-awareness, and you know, being mindful and respectful, not only to each other, but our partners, has really driven, you know, some very concrete, reflective practices from our students. You know, we are developing systems thinking, we're developing divergent thinkers and social entrepreneurship, you know, the skills that our students are going to need for the future. And I think, you know, we're very aware of what the future holds. And I think what's been most rewarding for me is during the online periods, this is where the transformative learning has happened. We haven't just gone back to simple rote learning. We've inspired our students to take action and really come up with some cool projects. And, that's happened in the last 2 years. We've done really cool projects in the past, but it's when our students are self-managing and when they've got more time and the flexibility for the online learning, that's where the true change has been made.
I see there's quite a few questions in the chat. Laura, do you want me to pick one, or are you going to fire one at us?
No, I was going to say the same. I'm so grateful that our group here is really contributing. And so I was wondering who on the panel might want to talk about maybe barriers, because it's always wonderful to hear about fantastic things, but I know there's been barriers. Does anyone want to jump in with some of the barriers that you have experienced as you've tried to roll out transformative learning?
I'm going to jump in on that one a little bit. And I see Heidi nodding, so Heidi is also keen to jump. I first want to start off is like with how do you get to a position like this, right? It's not that you can just throw this at your staff, or you can throw this at students or at the community. This is has been a process of years. And this case, for years, we've taken the time to really build solid curriculum within our departments to ensure that people are understanding what is really applicable to the right age category, and to make sure that we're really still addressing the expectations that are out there and the meeting the needs of the students to really still be able to access the higher education. Now, once you've got that in place, we have been very fortunate that this growth in the example of the unit that you've seen there is actually taking place quite naturally. So once we have it all there, and once you actually give professional development time for people to sit down and connect with those other subjects, actually all of a sudden it will go that our INS teacher in this case will go like, hang on a minute, but what we're looking at in this element, in this subject, works perfectly fine with English. And literally in this case, we had John, our design teacher, jumping in and saying like, but I can work with that and I can use my technology unit on that. The music teacher happened to be listening along and go like, but if you're making a movie, I'm teaching kids how to develop sound. So why don't I get them to develop the soundtrack for the system? So this unit about grade 6, we just discussed it again. And now for the coming year, we're already looking at including another subject, because Thai went like, well, if we're going out to the local community, we need to have those words. So students need to be able to communicate. So it's grown very organic in this sense. And in that sense, a lot of barriers from a teacher perspective have been taken away, because teachers see the benefit and they see the power of it. It also means that a teacher, if they want to do something great within this area, doesn't have to do it all by themselves. You're sharing the load. So when Heidi is very keen to deliver that service message about the elephant sanctuary around the corner, or about our dog shelter around the corner, she now has John to actually give that message through the film and through the video. So the teachers are actually supporting each other. And in that sense, time is taken away. What has been a barrier in that sense is, in order to get to that plan and to make sure that it is all matching, it's taking quite a bit of hours and quite a bit of time to fine tune everything. It's like, when are we able to go off to our service providers to get the footage we need? We can't do that before the students are having a clear understanding of how to create a documentary. So there's really that time frame of when needs to happen, and having that flexibility. That has been a little bit of the biggest barrier and a bit of the biggest challenge. Sorry, go on, John.
I think what's so wonderful about being here is that a lot of the barriers that you might have to get through, we don't have, because as a UWC and UWC Thailand, I think the key is to hire really well, to set out your stall that we are a transformative learning, to put it in our educational model, to say this is what we're going to do, and we have amazing educators here who just dive into it. Of course, there's the questions of time, and we could all do with more time, and we could all do with less preps to do this even better and better. But if you do it organically and you hire great people with a really cool vision, and allow people to fail spectacularly, and from leadership to be great, we tried it, we went for it, especially in 6 to 8. It didn't work, but we've learned, the students have learned. That's huge. But of course, time, and what's the old adage, don't let curriculum or timetables get in the way of greatness. Yeah. There's still those barriers. We just have to be clever and sensible and build it well enough that the structure's strong enough that it doesn't collapse. and it's not individuals based. And that's our next job, is to make it across the whole secondary school. So whoever comes in and goes in an international school, it's there. So
I think one area that you have missed out is really the financing and the staffing of it, which in many schools is a barrier. And I must admit, when we first started all of this, it's like, well, how are we going to staff, having 5 different groups going off campus at any one time? But with that structure and flexible timetable, and I think to do with the staff, the actual fact that if I'm taking a group off campus and I've got another group on campus, who is able to still maintain, some academic rigor in what the students are actually doing while staying on campus. So we've been really, really lucky with the financing and the staffing, to be able to make this happen, because in many schools that probably wouldn't be able to happen, within those health and safety remits.
Yeah,
There's
and
a nice question. Oh, so sorry, John. There's a nice question in the chat following up on that. And maybe, John, I don't know if you want to tackle this or someone else. Just how do you be so transformative and inspirational and still do well on exams? Is this generalizable across different campuses where just like ours, that rigor is also very important, and students doing well on those traditional metrics matters? Is it something that everyone can do and still do well traditionally? John, I don't know if you want to take that or if you want to add what you were going to say before.
I know I can jump right into that, actually, and it kind of fits with what I was going to say. Actually, one of the barriers that I see is skills. Right, it's hard to do really big projects and to do some of the things, especially from a design perspective, which I am my lens into the whole transformative learning aspect is skill sets. Right, is if we want to do something, you make a doghouse, or for the something like this, to donate and things like that. Oftentimes, kids don't have the necessarily what I would say the innate skills for it. But we've been really supported by our lower school, and especially like what experiential learning, outdoor education, we're getting to where we've had the conversations of, hey, what are we doing in these things that are allowing people to get those skills, right? And I think it lends exactly with what you're saying about being able to do well on tests as well and do well on exams at the end. These units that we're doing are not just what I would say is, it's not just all standing up and doing stuff, right? We're still keeping that research component. We're still following the principles of systems thinking and designing, and we're being in this ideation process of looking at the ways that things work and talking to people and interviewing them. And these skills are all things that can help in that aspect of learning as we go. It's not that we're just throwing it all out the window. We keep the content there and we build the projects as well to go along with it. Yeah,
and just to tag along with that one, John there's ready to tag along. It's like we are an MYP school, so we're still meeting the MYP criterion, and the students are still expected to meet those expectations. And as we said, often people aren't aware what's all taking place behind the scenes. They see the awesome and amazing stuff because that's what the students come home with. That's what your son or daughter comes home with to talk about. This is so cool, and this is what I did. They often don't mention the other learning, the content learning that's been taking place. So all on the way, there are clear English language and literature goals. There are clear humanity goals. There's clear design goals to be met. It's just because it's hidden and it's woven into, the kids do not feel it and don't necessarily see it as such. It's just part of the bigger project of this very cool outcome that they're achieving. And because they're so engaged, we often just find that they take the learning outside of the classroom and they're taking it home because they want to delve further into it. They want to further explore how to work with that video camera and how to get really into the correct shooting techniques, following John's videos and reviewing it again. Or they really want to find out more about the orphanage where they're going and just digging deeper into basically the structure before they come back into school. So we find actually, on the contrary, we find it's not limiting results. It's actually a positive stimulus for students to do actually better.
A couple of really great comments in the chat and questions regarding the flexibility or the ideas that you all might have in perhaps not being so grade specific. So grade 6s staying together, grade 7s, but maybe considering a child's individual development and disregarding those traditional grade structures. Any thoughts on that?
Sure, it's actually embedded in that values-aligned learning is very specifically designed across the 3 terms. That one of them will be in grades and the next 2 will be student choice across grades. I think that's really important. There was another one in there, I think, about different cultures. And I think that goes back a little bit to the different spaces and the different places and the different pedagogies. And I think we're very mindful that different certain students definitely learn better in different ways. That there, especially as a big international school with 70 different nationalities, some students are very used to very different pedagogies, and it's our job to combine and not make pedagogy binary, because that's education seems to have done that between agency and inquiry and you know, actual direct teaching, but that we do all of it. There's some direct teaching, there's lots of agency, there's lots of inquiry, there's all of those different pedagogies are allowed for and supported, and that's hard for sure. And project-based learning sometimes lends itself more to group work, but we also need to be mindful that some students would prefer to do it individually, and that the agency and the choice allows them to do that. And that's what agency is. I know what I have to do. This is how I want to go about it. And a lot of students that maybe start working individually will gravitate to groups, and some that work in groups will gravitate to individual, and that's the flexibility. So definitely there. We will start with 6 to 8. So the vertical will only be across 3 grade levels. But our mission is we start this ideation that we're in small, we build it well, like we have for the last 4 years, to go to the next stage. Overreaching without solid foundations is something that we're very mindful not to do.
Yeah, and can I jump in? I just read another question on the chat where I see, like, how do you envision this? Like, it's all possible, like within a small school, but how do you envision it to let this take place in a smaller school? Like, as we mentioned at the start, one of our ideas is actually that to make this more community driven. So to look more at actually who would benefit as well from this education. So in the future, when we do grow and it becomes more challenging maybe to staff it internally, we'll definitely reach out simply to the members of a community who have an interest, but also a passion, and the knowledge for it to drive it. And in our community, we have wonderful parents who have great backgrounds in various areas where they could definitely support us and could support the education of our students in different ways. So that will be avenues for us to explore in the future once we're getting to that obstacle.
That might be an actual great segue into a question we have here on the chat from a high school student, which is fantastic. Wondering if you consider the transformative learning ideation and structures in place as a way that students might be able to go through any sort of process of self-discovery and kind of considering the paths that they might want to take. How do you see that encouraging or facilitating that important journey for children?
It's a great question, whoever answers it. Unless Heidi wants to start, I'll start, because Heidi will probably have some phenomenal ideas on this.
I'll come after you. I'll listen to your words of wisdom first.
I think supporting everybody in our community to pursue interests and to kind of find out where their journey is going to take them, I think is part of everything that you have to do as a school. And I think it's part of everything that you have to do from the curriculum you teach. You have to make sure that it speaks to people, that it takes in as much of a worldview as you can. The mindfulness is a really important piece of that, so that people can actually pause and think and reflect. The social emotional learning part of our curriculum, where we talk about, well, we actually bring in a lot of parents to talk about their learning journey and their career journey as part of that. The outdoor ed about resilience and kind of having that space. And there's a great, Kurt Hahn also said solitude is really important. So building solitude in for people so they have that thinking space, and then the service. I think all of that gives the foundations for, I think, some of us as educators and a lot of our students, the space and the time and the different experiences to think about what next. And I think it's really important as a high school student to realize that the journey that you go on is very, very rarely defined when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's more likely to be defined when you're 28, 38, 47, 65. So it's kind of like lots of interest, lots of opportunities, lots of thought, lots of transforming of understanding of who you are, lots of transforming of beliefs, ideas, working with people, the commitment to being active and making change in the community, in the world. If we build that, that gives opportunities. But if you haven't decided what you want to do, please don't panic. Don't worry. There's a very long road ahead of you. And the more interests and opportunities that you take and you pursue, the more likely that you are to be able to find that interest that becomes possibly a passion and maybe a career.
And just, yeah, piggybacking on what John's saying there, and the fact that the opportunities we provide our students inside and outside of the classroom is quite phenomenal, not only through the outdoor education program, but through the service as well. And what I really love is the fact that we give our students solid leadership opportunities right from the PYP, where grade 5s are working with the kindergartens and grade 2s. The grade 10s are actually running co-curricular programs for our primary school. Our senior students in the diploma program are working with organizations like Amnesty International and setting up programs who themselves are not only leading, but they're also supporting our younger students. So when we're talking about, transformative and inspiring, our students are inspiring each other, for change and development, and really trying to reach these ideals that we're trying to have. We've got a huge sense of idealism. Yeah, we'll mess up. Yes, mistakes will get made along the way. But, just encouraging that student to take that very first step and being brave, is such an opportunity for them. And I think what's great about our students is the fact that they know that there's that support system. They're going to fall down multiple times in trying all of these new experiences and learning these new skills, but appreciating it's non-judgmental, appreciating the fact that we're here to pick them up and dust them off and put them back on that treadmill I won't say treadmill, put them back on the path to maybe take a different direction. But yeah, the more opportunities and more ideas our students come with, just certainly excites us as a community. And yeah, we're looking at change makers and actually making change makers, which is more important.
So a really good question that came up in the chat. And I personally would be fascinated from our secondary principal, NYP coordinator, service and design teacher to hear maybe each of your individual answers on this. So all of this sounds fantastic, but how do you know students have been successful? What is that success criteria? How are you measuring success? It sounds a bit intangible sometimes. So how would we know a child has been successful in a transformative learning process? John Lancet, you ready? We're going to hear from design first.
John first.
Ooh, on the spot. I think it all comes from self-moderation, right? And a little bit of self-actualization. And what I like to do in my classes as a concrete example for you is students are going to set their own success criteria, right? They are going to say, I want to reach this level. And we're going to, as a design teacher, I'm going to hold them to that. You want to build this thing, this is what we're going to do. I want to create this program, this is what we're going to do. And they're setting their own levels, which then makes it very simple in a lot of ways to see if they get there or not. And, they may not. Oftentimes they won't, right? Because the students tend to have very high expectations of what they want to accomplish here. And so we'll discuss why, and we'll discuss the process they went through to do that. And the reflection of it is honestly where the learning is occurring, right? And that reflection and that part where they go, oh, hey, I could have done better here. I could have done this thing. Oh, if I had gone out of my way to talk to this person, I may have learned that answer earlier. And it's that self-actualization that really, for me, shows that they're doing the learning and they're reaching those goals. And we see that they're getting that transformation that we're looking for. Ooh, who's next?
I'll jump. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a two-way split in how do you measure success. Like, there's still very much a culture of parents wanting to see a number on paper on how students are actually doing well and how they're achieving, which is in place because we're still following the NYP curriculum and criterion. So that is in place. So in that sense, there is a measurement of success to where students are sitting around the world. However, within the school, and it's also a message that we always tell our parents, is that we measure success within the school by looking at the effort that students put in there. If students are excited about their lessons and are taking the learning outside of the classroom and continue to work on it voluntarily at home and want to push themselves and come to us and share what they've learned and what they're building and working on, that for me is success. Success for me is that students want to take ownership over the learning and they want to continue the learning independently. They don't need that extra push from us, but they want to dive deeper. So there is a little bit that split. We're still in a system, unfortunately, where we have to make that learning visible, and that's linked to the NYP criterion with the grading system that applies there. But as educators, we really value that enthusiasm and really that progress that we see within each student.
As CAS coordinator, I work a lot with the grade 11 and 12s. So how do we measure success? Well, you know, John Lancet already mentioned about the reflective writing. You know, when I can actually physically stand or feel I can stand in their shoes and I'm getting goosebumps from reading what they've done. But it's also when they actually come knocking down at my door, coming up with these great ideas, building on other projects, building up on other ideas that they've already been involved in. And more powerful than that is those emails that you get when they're at university, writing about the programs that they're heavily involved in, or even reading about the scholarships and the university entrance, or going on to do internships, or any particular course that they've chosen post UWC. But it's the grounding that they've had through their transformative learning, and it's the grounding they've had through their CAS portfolios and their experiences that's enabled them to access the next step of their life. For me, that's the most empowering, and just receiving those emails and just talking about the work that they're continuing doing, you know, that's a measure of success. They're just continuing to live it. It's not just something that is taught, you know, they write it down, the book's closed, they're done with it. It's a lifestyle choice that they make.
Heidi, can you share about the student-initiated trip that just went out over Christmas? Because this encapsulates it for me.
I've got my tissues. Yeah. So we had a group of grade 11 and 12s who've run a student-initiated trip. So basically they plan it from start to finish, going through a series of steps moderated by myself and the health and safety officer and the nurse and the head of school, etc. So they go off and they work with the community. So they went to a small island in Thailand, and they work with the Moken, the sea gypsies, for best part of a week. They have a very limited budget, which again, I'm very grateful that we have this within our budget process. And the budget covers the transport, the accommodation, insurance, contingency, first aid, you know, you name it, it covers it. After day 4 of the students working with the community, they decided that they would cut back on their personal expenditure on the meals that they were buying for breakfast, lunch and dinner and snacks, and actually group that money together so they were able to cater for a group of 60 Moken children. So taking the money, going to the local market, purchasing all the ingredients, sourcing a kitchen large enough for them to do the cooking for the 60 children, and then serving it to them. So, you know, there was something that they sat down and they felt very powerful. They felt very strongly about the fact that, you know, these children aren't getting enough food and they've got the luxury of having the 3 meals a day. So let's support them. So, and that's just one example of some of the great choices our students make.
Such a cool moment. And that's a community that we've worked with for a very long time, which makes it great. For me, there's a couple of things I think we'll really know and we'll really be able to judge in about 20 years' time when we look at what our graduates are doing in 20 years' time. I have high hopes for them. But I think just concretely, if we're talking about students better understand themselves and others from our social emotional learning program, and just watching that development of them understanding and their use of mindfulness and their use of all the strategies that we're doing now, that's a very concrete thing. The leaders and change makers, he's just given a great example. The proactive in reconciling the tensions, just the conversations that are had in the boarding house at Thursday Fortnight, in our student-run coffee shop, those conversations are just amazing, and they happen every lunchtime, and it's just, you know, that's the conversations these students are having, and it's not concrete, but when you're having an hour-long conversation about refugee issues and where the issues lie and how can it be solved, and you're talking with 2 of our refugee students and 3 other students about that, I mean, that's just transformative right there. The new value, I mean, our personal projects are coming up, the new values that we are creating, the fact that we have groups of kids going off every single Friday to do beach cleanups just off their own bat. They just do it because that's how they're driven. And I think inspiring and driving and changing the future, we have high hopes. We're 12 years old as a school, we're 5 years old as a UWC, and we already have people who've come through us doing cool stuff. I'm not taking all the credit. We have awesome human beings that come in and hopefully leave as awesomer human beings. It's a word I've just made up, but I think that there's lots in there, and there's lots that we get to see every day. And I think we need to, and we are doing a better job of sharing that message of the day-to-day great things that happen. And that's more of a measure of a community and a school and an ethos and a mission and a vision and values than really important that our kids get the scores that they need in their diploma to access their next step, whatever those scores may be for their next step. But equally important is the humans they turn into.
So it's a really great question in the chat. I think we've got a couple left in there, so we'll try and get them in quickly because I know we're running short on time. Obvious question in there that it's a really privileged position for students to be in, to even be accepted into a UWC. What do we do to ensure that they're aware of their privilege? Understanding, of course, as John said, that we get a lot of students coming in on full scholarship and who are refugees, but even that is a privilege, right? They're given an opportunity that many students are not given. How do we make sure they're not arrogant? How do we make sure they hold an awareness of other, and that that privilege is understood and managed well? Who would like to tackle that one?
It's a really good question. I think what's really great about UWCs and their deliberate diversity that differs from a lot of international schools is you also have very economic diversity. I always remember that we have some students who come in at 17, 18 years old, that when they get their pocket money, it's the first money that they've ever had in their lives. There's a great story from 2 years ago. Some of our kids were in quarantine in Bangkok, and we had a couple of students who were moaning about the food in the quarantine. And we had one student who, for the first time in her life, had her own bed, her own room, her own bathroom, and had 3 meals a day. And I think that grounds us. And I think the sharing of those stories and the sharing of those experiences in the community grounds us well. Do we do it as well as we could? Probably not, but that grounding is really important. I think one of our next steps for transformative learning is a lot of UWCs do it, and we haven't yet because we're new and because of some pandemic. But the short courses that we offer as a UWC, where we bring people into us and share what we do with our local Thai communities, or our local Phuket communities, our wider Thai communities, and the Southeast Asian community. I think that's really important for us to do, to recognize our place in the world and to allow us that grounding. For sure, these kids are privileged to have a scholarship, and the scholarship they have with us also allows them the privilege to apply to the US for other full scholarships to get into universities. We're lucky that a lot of our grade 11s and 12s remind us of that through their actions, through their humility, and through the conversations they have with others. But it's a continual thing we have to be mindful of, and not be arrogant or not be entitled. We live on a fabulous island in a great campus. But I think the community that we have grounds us pretty well.
And I think the students are very aware, John, that on the doorstep, there are migrant workers who live in similar conditions that many of our students have actually come from as well. And as you said, they're sharing the stories of their backgrounds. And, you know, we've had very wealthy students sharing rooms with students who've come from very impoverished backgrounds. And I think it's, you know, the opportunity to walk in each other's shoes and share those stories that does ground them. And it is that reality check, because, you know, if you go to any other international school, and I may generalize here, but, you know, they go to the fancy hotels on a week by week basis, but they're never really in touch with the local community or people who have come from different backgrounds. And that deliberate diversity, you know, really enables students to share the stories and share the reality. Overhearing a student only literally 2 months ago, part of the food packing program that we do to support our local community, one of the older students says, "Oh, why are you involved?" And the student turned around and said, "Because I've been the recipient of this for the best part of my life." You know, reality check for anybody right there.
And that transformative piece of transforming our own understanding, thinking, belief, and that of others, that's so important in transformative learning. Just those conversations and the sharing of ideas and experiences, it's huge. It's kind of the key part of it in many ways.
Because I think, going back to understanding, what is a refugee, what is a migrant, and you ask some of the younger students, to describe it, they come up with a very stereotypical view, but then you look at the reality of it, and it's quite shocking, but it is that realization. And as I say, it raises that awareness and transforms our students' understanding.
And as people have mentioned on the panel, I think that transformative transition happens for us as adults as well. And I'll maybe start with a reflection on the last question I'll ask our panel, and anyone who might want to answer about the teacher reflection. As teachers have guided transformative learning, how has that been for them from a reflective standpoint? And I would say that for me, and in line with the answers just given, I think there's a lot that we still have to grow as far as our hiring practices and making sure that the staff and teachers that we bring in reflect the diversity that we have in our student body. And I'm really proud that some hires we've made this year and into the next year are teachers who came from very humble backgrounds. I mean, one of our teachers grew up on a dirt floor in rural Mexico. Our new head of business coming in is a Lao refugee. I'm very proud of some incoming hires that reflect our student body in a much more diverse and more appropriate way. And so for me, the reflection taking forth there is can I bring in some adults that bring that balance as well of perspectives and experiences? I think that's really valuable and allows children to see themselves and the adults around them, and to also know that you can come from any background at all, and given a lot of luck and a lot of hands extended and you really driving forward can get to where you'd like in life. I don't know, for you all, leading transformative learning, reflection for yourself on how that's been for you, or what you notice in teachers as far as that process.
I think just as a coordinator here, it's like one of the biggest reflection is just the ability to be able to be open-minded and let others go and run with it, and give the agency over to the teachers, to the ones who really know the ins and outs of their specialty, is the key to really drive this forward. People, in order to really do transformative learning, yes, you need the right people in the right place. So the hiring is in that sense key, that you really have people with that mindset. And once you have those people on your staff, they want to move forward and they will look for opportunities themselves in that beautiful area already. They only need a bit of the structure and a bit of the guidance and the motivation to actually take that next step. And then it's just key and important then to give them time and space to actually let them fly, but also let them fail and know that you'll be there as a team to actually make things happen and make things work, or improve things simply together. That's the biggest takeaway. We have so much power and so much knowledge within our team. It's making sure that we have an opportunity actually to bring that out and to connect people with each other to actually develop that even further.
I think build it slowly. Have a natural evolution, have great humility, model failure spectacularly, laugh a lot, get a great team around you, don't take it too seriously, because, and ultimately probably listen to the kids, because they'll probably transform it better than we ever can, given the opportunity. So
I think as a teacher, for me, it's empowering. Like, honestly, it's empowering to know that empowering to know that your administration is behind you, and that the students are actually like rooting to do really awesome things. And I think the point is that, like, when you see kids that have been in the program for a while and that are now taking my design diploma course, like, they're making the choices that we're asking, that we're putting in front of them in the MYP, and that they get there in their IA and DP, and they're saying, oh, I want to design a natural latex pillow for refugees that won't mold so they don't get sick, so they don't miss work. I mean, these kind of things and the decisions they're making, for me, that's what it's all about. I think as educators, we're a lot of times idealists, and we want to see those things, and to push them and to see them doing it on their own. It's empowering as anything could be in education.
And I think for me then, trying to build up those legacy partnerships, that not every partnership will work. And, there has to be a certain cutoff point. You've been working with them for months or maybe years, but there comes to a point where, mission and visions don't align, and you're not helping each other. So there has to be that umbilical cord cut off at certain points. But who you're working with, work well with them.
Thanks so much, Heidi. It is 5 o'clock, and that is the time frame that we gave ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, John Field, Heidi Oxley-Whitnell. Thank you, Remke Langenach and John Lancet, for all of your insights, and to all of our participants today for your wonderful questions. That was fantastic to have such a nice dialogue back and forth. Into the chat, our head of admissions and marketing is putting in the list of future webinars. There's so many great topics to come, so many amazing things that we want to discuss and that we want the community to come together on. So we hope to see you in the future for some of those that we have coming. One of my favorites coming is the case for personal challenge. And so if you're into really challenging children and the benefit that can come from resilient experiences, you might want to join us for that one. There is a quick promotional video at the end. If you've seen it before, feel free to exit out, and we'll hope to see you next time. If you can't wait to see more about UWC Thailand, you want to hang on for that. Thanks everyone so much for joining us today. We're really appreciative for your time, and we'll hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone. That concludes our webinar for today. A recording will be sent and a thank you message with all of the slides that you got today. And we hope you can look back through those and enjoy and join us at our very next webinar. Thanks so much. Have a good night, everyone.